Today, teams compete on patch 814, and with no wiggle room available in the standings, a win right out the gate could gain teams some serious traction. Earlier, Haunser crashed in on some team chances. The fans attempted to drown each other out ahead of our first game of the day. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NA LCS Countdown, where for 30 minutes we talk about our favorite blended iced beverage and predict how the patch will affect teams until the timer reaches zero and we jump into Champion Select. Now, last week we showed you this representation of the standings, but there were some obvious flaws with this interpretation, so we decided to make things more clear with this new, updated version of the standings. Makes a heck of a lot more sense to me now, doesn't it, fellas?
A little bit. I mean, CLG looks like
a little bit.
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out which direction that coaster is going.
Up or down?
Yeah, because I don't know if they're going down to CLG or
exciting or terrifying.
Up backwards to C9.
Where on this ride would you like to be if you were an LCS team? In which position?
I think I want to be the people that's like to the right of Golden Guardians, kind of behind that one pillar. They look like they're in a good spot.
There you go. All right. Well, sincerely though, with only 4 weeks left in the split, the NA LCS still remains wide open as the teams in first, 100 Thieves, Echo Fox, FlyQuest, and Team Liquid are only 3 wins ahead of 10th place Cloud9, meaning any of those teams can make their way into or out of a playoff spot in just a few games. The closest we've ever seen the league through this number of games. We'll see if anyone can begin that kind of win streak with our games today in the schedule presented by Jersey Mike Subs. TSM kicks things off with their match versus Cloud9, with Echo Fox against FlyQuest later on in the day. Plus, Clutch Gaming versus 100 Thieves to close out the day. And if you're wondering about the NA LCS Lounge, tune in tomorrow where Azael casts alongside Clutch's Seb Park and Team Liquid's Steve when their teams clash in Game 3. If you order Jersey Mike's today, make sure to use the promo code JMNALCS with your online purchase to earn in-game rewards and a chance at an all-expenses-paid trip to the Summer Finals in Oakland. Now on Tuesday, the trade lock hit the NA LCS and one transfer dominated the news week between Cloud9 and Echo Fox. As a reminder, we're going to throw up on the screen the lineup as it was seen in week 1. This, of course, included Phoenix, Alltech, and Adrian as their bottom trio on the map. But just within this week, all 3 of those players have been dropped from the roster.
Exactly, so a complete mix-up of 3/5 of the Echo Fox roster. They had Demonte on their academy team. He's started multiple weeks in the LCS, but they're also bringing in Lost, who's an OS import. And then the really big news was this trade.
Yeah, Smoothie, as being one of the primary shot callers for C9 for so long, borderline MVP candidates in some splits, is now joining Dardoch and Huni, who have each had their own kind of runs at the NA LCS MVP ballot, and then you throw in Lost and Demonte as well. Completely new lineup from what we were seeing at the start of the split.
So a relative unknown slotting into that bot laner position we have in Lost, and then Smoothie coming over from Cloud9. There's a bit of a peculiarity here, Jap, because typically when we see Academy bot laners in particular come up to the LCS stage, it's usually always next to their counterpart in the Academy League.
And there's 2 things going on. It's both the shot calling fit and also the mechanical fit with the synergy of his bot laner. The fact that Smoothie and Lost have basically never played together prior to a week ago means there could be some definite growing pains. But if you were to have thought of this trade 3 months ago, Smoothie was actually an MVP candidate along with Huni. So you now have 2 MVP candidates on one team, but a lot has changed since then perception-wise, and Smoothie again has something to prove.
Right, and I think there's a lot that can go wrong with this trade. Like Jat was saying, not only have these guys not played together actually, but they also weren't even in the same org, where sometimes, you know, it's like, oh, well, I've never played with Adrian, but I've been watching him play because we live in the same house or on the same team, we scrim sometimes. There's not that level of familiarity, and then Smoothie's always a guy who is such a vocal component of the teams that he's on. That's one of the problems actually C9 said they were running into, was too vocal, and then you're combining that with Dardoch and Huni, who have very strong opinions.
Yeah, and also there isn't a backup plan for Echo Fox anymore. They had actually been running support by committee with Fang and Adrian. They're both gone. They actually also signed a new academy support, so if Smoothie's not working out, it's just another new guy they're throwing into the org. So
how do we reconcile the possibility of personality clashes on this team? Because if Smoothie is supposed to be this vocal member, perhaps a leader, how does a personality like that interact with what we know are 2 large personalities in both Huni and Dardoch on the top side?
Well, he's a smart kid, so I'm sure he'll know, like, as I'm moving in here, I don't want to, like, come in and completely disrupt everything they're doing, so I'm sure he'll come in with a little bit more of a backseat the first couple of weeks before trying to slot into maybe what is missing or seeing where he can help, as opposed to coming in and being like, this is how I did things on C9, that's how we're doing it now.
That's a possibility, though.
It could
right?
be.
You never know who's going to want to call the shots.
Right.
The fact that Echo Fox has ran with so many different mid laner AD carry support like thoughts, especially as we heard they were doing a lot in practice, and the fact that their head coach is gone.
Yep.
Right? It is, I think, very much Huni and Dardok's team and just calling all the shots. So I think Smoothie has to take a back seat.
Astronomical number of changes this roster and this team has gone through over the course of the summer split. With the premiere of NA's first Oceania import, we decided to call upon the experts from his home region to give us a rundown.
G'day, NA LCS fans. Spawn here with EG Macorsa Casters for the Oceanic Pro League, and we're just here to give a quick update and a wrap, I guess, on Lost, the new starting AD carry for Echo Fox. Obviously, someone that you're very familiar with, Bryce, has been through every facet of the Oceanic system.
Has absolutely there, and we had a few AD carries back in his time back when I was a player. Like, we had some laners, we had some team fighters, but the thing Lost was known more so than anything else was being super well-rounded and having that really good mindset to play sort of everything.
It certainly was. Also was one of the few players that now is an import, but started in the OCS, our secondary league with Chiefs Black, was able to promote through with Tainted Minds, and then obviously played a couple of splits as well with Legacy and was their star player.
Yeah, 100%. Was the Golden Boy. Soul Strike's their coach, still for Legacy, but he was the chosen one for that lineup and got a lot of criticism, very harsh coaching structure, but had the mentality to back it up, and maybe that's why we've seen him improve so much and now make it to NA.
Absolutely. A player that has really come from the bottom. Now he's here. Of course, the whole of the Oceanic region is going to be riding with Lost throughout this journey. So best of luck to him this weekend.
Across the Pacific, looking to prove himself here on the North American stage. We'll see how he does. But in addition to Echo Fox's moves from this week, Clutch Gaming also came out and announced pretty major roster moves for them themselves. 3 players hitting the bench. We got Lyra, Apollo, and Hakuho out. In their place, Moon, Piglet, and Vulcan.
And this is a tough one to really break through because Lyra's obviously kind of been the underperformer on the team, not just in his late game playmaking sometimes, but also obviously in the smiting everyone's been critical of. And so it makes sense to want to shift something around here, but it feels like there's a lot more going on than just that.
Yeah, and their bottom lane has actually been seen as one of the strong points of their team historically. I thought in the last few weeks they had maybe been underperforming a bit, but this is a little strange to me. I think Hakuho is one of the best players on the team, if not the best player on the team. And when they sub out Lyra for Moon, which I've been wondering when they're going to do that for a while, it opens up an import slot, technically. And Piglet is a very experienced LCS player. It's just we haven't talked about him because he's been on the Academy roster for so long. So to me, this makes me think the Clutch is really just trying to get Piglet in there. Even if their announcement was saying how they really wanted to let Vulcan get some time. I just don't see a world where you're putting Vulcan in over Hakuho.
Right, like if all this resolves and you're back with Lyra and Apollo, is it really Vulcan over Hakuho then? Which doesn't make sense to me either. And to me, what this feels more of is like we're going up against 2 #1 teams this weekend. Our former starters were no longer cutting it. We were trending downwards. We're already out of the playoff picture. We need to try something new. And if this roster can go pick up some wins versus potential opponents in playoffs, that's a good sign.
I just wish that they would do less, right? Like, I think everyone has been saying that Lyra's been underperforming. Try Moon. Great, right? If you really think Piglet's great, scrim him with Hakuho, find synergy with them, and then play them.
This brings up a much larger discussion, which is in this, new franchise and academy system that we have. What do we think is the best practice teams should take when making changes to the roster? As the way you're describing it, it sounds like controlling variables so that you actually know if that variable was the positive or negative effect you expected it to be.
Right.
You can actually tell.
And Clutch has way more context on this than I do.
Of course.
Right? Like, they could have a very clear reason for this. But I think that there's so little time to figure out if you have the right thing. And Clutch is seeing themselves at 4 and 6 with the hard roster. They think they're probably going 4 and 8 if they stick with what they had. So they're trying a lot at once, almost like a shotgun approach.
Yeah, trial by fire. Like if this roster is going to work out at all, this is the hardest week you're going to have for the whole second half of the split, basically.
Right, no better way to instill confidence in this new 5-man if they're to come away with a 2-0 against 2 very tough teams here in this week. This week's teams, they do play on patch 814, which hosts quite a few changes, most notably, though, introducing the Monster Hunter debuff. Break it down for me.
Right, so this is intended to ruin the funnel strategy. If you have the most individual gold on your team and a jungle item, lane minions grant 10 less gold per kill, and that penalty doesn't go away until you completed a tier 3 jungle item, which is over 2,000 gold in. Now, how this actually manifests in-game, this is a graphic from the Freak Show that you can find on YouTube. The green line at the top is the actual gold from a funnel game, but then post-nerf, if the Monster Hunter buff would be in the game, he wouldn't actually even have an advantage against the enemy non-funneled mid, which essentially makes that strategy pointless to run because you're sacking 700 gold to the Monster Hunter buff in the first 10 minutes.
Right, and this is, of course, you can complete the item a little bit earlier than 10 minutes if you hard rush it, but a lot of the time people are doing things like boots, or they're just upgrading it to the level 2 and then going Ginsus or something, depending on what the strategy is. So you can kind of get the advantages back faster, but you're still kind of going to be behind for most likely the first 8 minutes of the game.
Yeah, unquestionably a nerf to funnel
Big nerf.
and or smite mid composition. So we wanted to see how this might affect the teams within the league by pulling up the statistics and win rates of teams having already played these strategies so far this split.
And the one that obviously jumps out is 100 Thieves. They've ran the funnel 4 times. They're 4-0 with it. If you remove those games from them, they're 2-4 in the standings, which, you know, who knows, maybe they still pick up a couple more wins. But either way, that's kind of crazy that the vast majority of their wins are coming from this one strategy that's now basically dead.
Yeah, and I would argue that it actually helps the teams that didn't run funnel,
Right.
didn't run smite mids. And this is why we were talking so much at the start of the season about what a difficult situation these teams were in, because very early on to funnel, you had game design saying that they don't like funnel and they're going to work on solutions to try and decrease it. So how much practice do you put into the strategy, which is going to disappear at some point, versus learning the other stuff? So now a team like 100 Thieves, whose way they found to win was funnel, they now have to find a new way to win.
Yeah, and with this as well, the smite nerf that we were seeing, or the smite mid, excuse me, were nerfed as well. So the Talon mid that Mickey was using to great effect is really not the same champion anymore. You can still play Talon, he's still a good champion.
Right,
But you're
Power
not,
of Evil taking smite on a few champions as well. Not going to have that option.
yeah, you're not going to come to lane level 2. You're not going to hit level 6 but while the other guy's 5 anymore. These strategies are in a much worse spot, basically.
Without a doubt, a big change to the game. We'll see how teams react and adjust to it. As well, though, TP changes a minute cooldown or additional cooldown here, both on the cast and the cancel.
Yeah, and I think the jury's a little out on this one. From what I saw in Academy last night and some of the other regions, like TP is still very prevalent. You'll still see it on some mids and some bot laners. So the goal of kind of knocking it out of the meta and trying to get it back to mostly a top lane summoner doesn't feel like it's quite been reached. But it does present more opportunities for combat summoners now.
Yeah, and I think even before the cooldown got increased, there were situations where Ignite could be better in less organized play, in solo queue. The question will be, when do we hit the breaking point where having lane priority early is enough to lose out on being able to get back to lane so quickly? And it could already be there, but because we've had about a week or two to experiment, teams are still running teleport now. Because I think in solo queue, Ignite or Exhaust
is almost completely taking over. Okay, but so what do you think the breaking point is? Because again, the cooldown is only getting longer. But anytime I even begin to think about how organized play, competitive play, you know, kind of stories out, it's always about map control. It's always about finding those flanks and being able to start fights on your own terms, less about the amount of power I have, you know, within a spell.
Right, that's the thing is TP, when you get to the 25-minute Baron dances, is so much better than Ignite ever will be. And I think you get into those situations so frequently in competitive play, it's very hard to force teleport out of those situations. Whereas in solo queue, you're not baiting around Baron for 3 minutes in a row. You can take the Ignite.
Yeah, other quick fun ones that we'll run through real quick. We got Ghost Poro. A couple changes there, of course, gives you Adaptive Force if you have it placed in the enemy jungle. Also allows you to choose where you want to place it by replacing your trinket there.
Yeah, I think this takes over for Zombie Ward because Zombie Ward also got nerfed / changed in the last patch. You may see a lot of early game invades and people trying to hide their Ghost Poros.
I want to see it.
Proceed with caution.
CLG, please, right?
When
anyone. Big for their level 1, so we'll see how they can utilize it.
I've taken Ghost Poro a lot of times in solo queue and I'm like, I'm gonna go get some AD early on in the game, and I actually just give the opponent 400 gold.
Oh,
so
good strategy.
There's something in there.
Ghost Poro problem, Jet problem.
Victor and Corky got small buffs as well. We'll hit on those if they are played throughout the day, but with the potential of these advantages and disadvantages coming through, let's roll right into predictions, see what you guys have in mind for the day. I do believe there are a couple differences. They do come in games 3 and 4, Echo Fox versus FlyQuest, Golden Guardians versus Team Liquid. Gentlemen, explain yourselves. Why do we have the confidence in FlyQuest? I mean, I know they're sharing first place.
Less confidence in FlyQuest, a little bit more of a concern with Echo Fox and some of the things that we're highlighting at the top of the day. I don't know if the week will be enough to get on the same page exactly, and like you said, FlyQuest sharing first.
And then, of course, Golden Guardians versus Team Liquid. Jat, Golden Guardians have looked hot recently. Why are you still riding on the Team Liquid train?
It's a very difficult prediction, but I feel like Team Liquid goes through these cycles of looking pretty bad and then getting it together for like a stretch of time. And since they actually looked pretty bad against FlyQuest and Cloud9, and they only had that one good-looking game against COG, they got a few more in them.
Oh, so this is the uptick, in the peaks and valleys.
You saw the roller coaster.
Yeah, you're
start,
just
right?
you're playing the rise and fall.
They bottomed out already.
Yeah, they got.
I like it. Okay,
loop.
they've just gone through the loop-de-loop, and now they're on the way back up. We'll see who's less wrong after today's results, but now we're going to step away. Don't run off. When we return, we play a little Wheel of Misfortune and break down TSM versus Cloud9. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the NA LCS Countdown. We're about 10 minutes away from Champion Selective Game 1, and with the teams in North America constantly trading blows, it's feasible to make an argument that any team could walk away as the Summer Split champion. So I'm going to make each analyst do just that in our newest segment, Wheel of Misfortune. The way this works is we spin the wheel. One of the analysts will then be charged with telling me how that team ends up becoming the Summer Split champion. Jat's going to go first, so let's spin that wheel and see who he's got to argue for.
There you go, you spin it. Which way do you go?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
nicely done. Nicely done.
Touchscreen technology.
Yeah, absolutely real.
Yeah, that's
Not
how hard it's
fake.
spun it.
Here
Golden
we
Guardians.
go.
Oh.
Golden Guardians is who you got to
Yeah.
argue for. How do they win the Summer Split?
Well, you can see they've been on such an uptick already. I think specifically the variety of champions that they play is their biggest asset. Not many of these teams have been able to adapt that quickly. We're going to have a lot of changes coming up still, but the lane dominant style they've been able to play bottom lane, the fact that Mickey actually has been able to achieve lane priority on a lot of people makes that a replicatable strategy for them. Then you have that guy like Lorlo up there who plays more solo queue than most pros, specifically focuses on getting better for the stage in solo queue. He's not playing solo queue to climb, he's playing solo queue to get better. I really like that about him. So I think also you have a jungler in Contracts who already has Worlds experience.
Yep.
They can actually turn the corner, get that home game in the spring finals, summer finals, and then maybe take it home.
I mean, they're looking good. What a run it would be if that team, based on their spring split finish to now, was able to come away as the Summer Split champions. Mark, you're up next. Go ahead, spin the wheel, my friend. Let's see
right,
who
here we
you have
go.
to argue for. No.
Come on, man.
You
What?
spun
How'd
it
that
the wrong
happen?
way, too.
I'm gonna pull
Mark.
it down. That's how
You don't know
You
what
don't
you're
throw it
doing.
up. You don't throw it up.
All right, CLG.
CLG.
Hit
All
me with
right.
the logic.
They have the best early game in the league by far. Their 100% first blood rates are amazing. They consistently find advantages. Stixay and Biofrost have been fantastic all year long, basically, after the change to focus more with Biofrost being a shot caller for the team. They're switching back probably to more marksman. It feels like that's the direction the patches are heading. That's great for them because they've been on a tear. He's been figuring things out well. He has that bit of what you're talking about with the Golden Guardians, having the ability to try new things and have experimentation. They're not set in their ways all the time. And Darshan is beasting up in the top side without very many resources. And of course, Coach Zix, brightest mind in NA.
You talk about the amount of experience still on that roster and still from, NA finals. There is quite a bit of it. So it would be no surprise if they made it to that stage. And I do believe they would know how to conduct themselves if they found themselves there.
What I like about this game is that there's
Seven
different teams on here that are all within a game.
One
of
won't even
first.
make the playoffs.
We're
Like,
they're
one of
gonna
the win. One of these teams will not actually make the playoffs. Are there, obviously this is a thought exercise, but what do you think perhaps is CLG's biggest obstacle to overcome on a run to a Summer Split championship?
I think you need to find more consistency for them because you're going to be playing multiple best of fives that you're going to need to win. If you're lucky and you get a bye in the first round, that's great for a team like them who can struggle with it, but they have always been a team since their inception, it feels like, that can lose any game.
I think consistency is a thing that any team in the North American LCS would be lucky and very happy to find right now. Turning our attention to Game 1, though, Sven talks about how the criticism around TSM's performance is a part of being on the historic org.
I mean, I'm pretty sure TSM is the only team in the world that people will say they suck, even though they are one win away from first place, right? That's just a TSM thing, right? But I'm not confident per se, but I'm not like afraid or feeling like we're a bad team. Like, we have good scrims, and I feel like we have the manpower, talent, whatever, to be a good team. And we have good structure as well. Something goes wrong on stage too often, and we need to start playing the same thing in scrims as on stage and just be confident with it and have a better mixture of early game, late game, and having options in the game in the early game.
I mean, it's an interesting sentiment. Again, the kind of the history of the org is what kind of pushes that mentality forward of the fans, with the expectation being so great. And today's first match features two orgs that are former Titans gunning, right? To spark what once made them great.
I mean, exactly. They've been in 8 of the 11 banners that we have. They've won the split that many times. They've fought against each other in the finals 6 times. For a long time, the NA LCS felt like it was TSM versus C9. They had huge fan bases. They had the best players. They've always gone to Worlds since the LCS has been incepted, both of these orgs. And now they're in that situation where they're 5th place and 10th place. But winning cures all for this. As Sven mentioned, they're a game out of first. C9's in last, but if they win this, they're 1 game behind TSM with 7 games to go. So as many stumbles as they have had, this is still a historic matchup. And with the old rivalry, the winner matters a lot.
You already mentioned it. Currently, these teams are sitting at 5th and 10th place, respectively. They're desperate to gain some momentum heading towards playoffs.
Right, and it's been kind of a split-long problem for both these teams. TSM has looked as reactive and passive as we've seen in previous years when they had those kind of like ward memes, Bjergsen and 4 wards and those kinds of things. And it's a concern because it's like, where does the aggression start coming from? Sven and Mithy were never known to be super aggressive. Bjergsen is working with Grig, who is not the most experienced jungler, and Hanser kind of feels like an island up on the top side. The synergy is not there. You heard Sven saying, like, we know we have the firepower to be a good team, but you're running out of time to find that synergy.
Yeah, and then you look at C9, they're running out of even more time. They've started 9 different players, right? They started the split bringing up 3 of their academy members. Their academy team is crushing.
Yeah, they're first place.
They're first place. But C9 has just not been able to find that synergy on the stage, and they're absolutely out of time for the experimentation, but the glimpses have been there for this team. They were smashing so many of these early games. All of the people they brought up from Academy have had good games, right? But they just have never been able to put it all together.
And the big thing is that both these teams, since the inception of the LCS, have made Worlds.
Exactly.
And so going head-to-head here, while both teams are in pretty dire straits, it feels like, for their positioning, is a super important battle still.
Right, and a huge clarification point. Because they've both finished 5th, 6th in spring, they only have 10 championship points.
Right.
And the way it shakes out, that means if they miss playoffs, which one of these teams very likely could, they will not have enough championship points to even make the regional qualifier.
Exactly.
So that would be guaranteed missing Worlds if they miss playoffs.
They need to make playoffs, both of these orgs do, but I think it makes the sentiment that Sven shared even that much more important to recognize the closeness of the league. And while they are 5th and 10th, their reach, their ability to still gain that ground does exist. So it's about turning it on now and following through to the end of the season. With a much-needed win on the line, let's run through some of the breakpoint matchups for this game, starting, of course, in the mid lane, Bjergsen versus Jensen. This has always been a top-build matchup.
Yeah, historically, 2 of the best mid laners North America has ever had. Then every time they fought, it felt like an epic battle. This time around, with just the fact that the teams are not in their typical standings, it does feel like it's not the clash of titans with everyone else, mere mortals below them. You see that they are actually getting contested much more for these stats that they used to dominate.
Yeah, Jensen's only played 4 of the 10 games, so take these stats with that in mind. But even looking at Bjergsen, 10th in damage per minute, 7th in KDA, like these are, and also his map pressure hasn't been what it once was. That's not to say that they haven't shown those glimpses. Bjergsen's Talon game last week was awesome. Jensen had a really good Orianna game as one of his 4, but it's a slow start for these teams. It's inconsistency for these teams, and for them to reclaim their former glory, those mid laners need to perform.
Well, we shoot ourselves to the top side of the map. We find Licorice versus Hanser. Of course, you mentioned Mark already. At times, Hanser has put up MVP-like performances in the past, in past splits, past years, and Licorice has maybe been the highest performing member for Cloud9 up to this point.
Definitely the case, and it's where a lot of the burden, I think, falls for C9, just having their most consistent player over the course of all these roster changes step up and have another good game here against, like you said, Hanser, who still is holding his own for the most part. It's just he's not being able to blow those leads open like we saw when he was that MVP candidate.
Yeah, and holding his own could have been enough for Hanser back when they had the Bjergsen double lift, Sven Skaren always ganking bot and mid style, but that's not the style that they want to play anymore. It's very much wanting Hanser to be a carry and a leader on that team, and he's not been playing that way.
5th and 10th place, these teams have struggled to pick up the wins. They need to separate themselves from the pack, but I'm putting it to you guys. How do they do it today? Starting with TSM, Mark, you're going to take that squad.
The first thing I'm going to look at is avoid losing lanes. It feels feels like whenever Sven is 0-0-0 heading into 30 minutes, that's actually a great game for TSM, and he finds a way to take over the game. The other thing would be get Bjergsen rolling. That Talon game was one of the most proactive games we've seen out of him, and if he can work with Grig to get his own lead so that he can start roaming around the map by himself, I think that's going to be a huge advantage.
Unfortunately, Smite's out. They're going to have to find a different champion to do that with. We're going over to Jat for Cloud9.
Yeah, I mean, you know the meme of TSM strategy is do nothing and lose, right? So if they're going to try that one, just pick a better late game as C9, and you got this, right? I don't think TSM is in a spot where they can pick early game and snowball the game. So C9, who's been great early game, should just pick late game champions, execute in the early game, go into mid game with the lead and better scaling, and win from there.
Well, regardless of where they are in the standings, it is a historic matchup. Cloud9 versus TSM, the first one of the day. Time to throw it out to the arena for the call.